Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Halal Times YouTube channel. Today we brought to you another episode from the Halal Times, and the topic which we're going to discuss today is very important for all of us. Why? Well, the thing is, as you know, in Islam, alcohol is completely forbidden. But when we talk about this issue in terms of the people, in terms of the Muslims living in non-Muslim majority countries like the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and other parts of the world, we got to deal with this issue on everyday basis. Why? Because the thing is, as true Muslims, as devout Muslims, we have to understand how cooking is done in these countries. And of course, that knowledge we can use when we go visit restaurants or visit other people who don't know much about Islam. We got to understand this very topic so that we can make informed decisions when we face this situation. So the topic which we're going to discuss today is basically, is cooking with alcohol considered halal? This is the topic which we need to discuss. We have to get detailed understanding of what this topic is about and how we can deal with it when we are facing the situation like we're going to mention in the next few minutes. So let's discuss it. What do beer, battered fish, bolognese sauce, and tiramisu have in common? And the people who know these words, who know these kinds of foods, of course, for them the answer is very obvious. What it means is that the recipes of the products which I have mentioned, all these recipes contain alcohol. Most people know that alcohol is not halal for Muslims in any way to consume, of course. But what about cooking with alcohol and ingredients that include alcohol? That is a question which we need to address. Of course, we're not talking about drinking alcohol, but we're talking about the usage of alcohol while cooking different dishes. And some of you might be surprised to know that there are a lot of dishes, and especially in countries like Japan and a few other countries, alcohol, believe me or not, is used for cooking almost every single dish. When you go to a restaurant, most probably the dish which they present to you will be cooked in alcohol. So you got to be very aware of this issue when you go visit any restaurant in non-Muslim majority countries, and you got to confirm it before you place an order. So what are the recipes containing alcohol? As you might know, during the pandemic, cookbook sales skyrocketed and millions of people turned to food networks and online videos to learn how to cook or to expand their cooking abilities. This resulted in higher sales of cooking supplies, equipment, ingredients, ethnic foods, and even alcohol for cooking. More and more cooks who followed halal dietary requirements started asking us questions. What do I do when a recipe calls for alcohol? For a devout Muslims, if you follow Islam in your daily life, you might have very specific answer. Don't use, there could be at least a couple of variations of the answer to this very question. The very first option which you could opt for is that the person should avoid using the recipe entirely. If that recipe is made by using alcohol, then of course leaving that recipe, leaving that food will be the easiest option. Of course, we definitely agree with this. But another option is to simply ignore the alcohol component of the recipe. So it means if you still want to enjoy the taste of the food which you want to eat, then of course the next option would be that don't use alcohol component in preparing a certain dish, and then of course inshallah you will be safe. If the other ingredients are halal certified, there is no problem at all with the other ingredients, then of course that should be okay. Thankfully there are better options out there. There are some other options as well, of course. Instead of alcohol, you could start using alcohol substitutes for cooking the similar dishes, for cooking the dishes which initially required you to use alcohol for cooking these foods. And believe me, there are very good substitutes for alcohol in cooking. And of course, we would like to quote some of these substitutes. And hopefully, these substitutes will help you get a better understanding of why alcohol is not necessary for these recipes. So you can use other substitutes as well without using alcohol, and you can basically cook. You can get very similar taste. You can get even better taste if you don't use alcohol and instead use the substitutes which we're going to mention today. The very first substitute which we would like to mention is for brandy substitute is apple juice. For beer substitute, you could use chicken broth, tomato juice, or apple juice. Of course, any one of them you should be able to use. For champagne substitute, you could use sparkling apple juice. For kahlua or coffee liqueurs, a strong substitute would be coffee, simple coffee. For red wine substitute, chicken broth or beef broth or grape juice or even tomato juice should be used. Cooks can also combine grape juice with chicken or beef broth to get a better taste. For white wine, a possible substitute could be using white grape juice mixed with ginger ale or chicken broth. For tequila, you could use cactus or aloe juice. For rum, you may want to use molasses with pineapple juice or almond extract. Now there is another important related topic which we need to mention in today's discussion. That is vinegar. Many people want to know if vinegars like red wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar or white vinegar are halal. In fact, vinegars are derived from wine products but do not contain enough alcohol to intoxicate. Most scholars agree that vinegar is, of course, halal. Vinegars can be found in hundreds of over-the-counter sauces, dressings, and spreads in Europe, North America, in so many other countries as well. Vinegars are also healthy and add flavor to many foods. So you should be able to use vinegar without any problem instead of using alcohol. This vinegar is used to make cheese like ricotta, and it's an excellent cleaning product and antiseptic as well. So it means you could get a lot of health benefits as well by using alcohol. Now, we got to bust the myth that alcohol is necessary. Of course, alcohol is not necessary for use any kind of dish. To flambe, a cook douses a dish in alcohol, lights a match. This is the thing which we have observed in so many different restaurants. The flames spread and rise quickly and burn the alcohol off the food. It's often used when cooking fish, lobster, meat and desserts as well, of course. Unfortunately, flambe process does not remove all the alcohol, and neither does long time cooking. According to a 1992 study which was done in the US, after flaming, about 75% of the alcohol still remains in the pan. Studies that have been conducted by other organizations found that alcohol burns off after hours of cooking. For example, we would like to mention a chart which of course we will show you on the chart on the screen. For example, if you cook any dish for 15 minutes, 40% of alcohol will still remain in the pan. If you cook any dish for 30 minutes, 35% of alcohol will still remain. In the same way, if you cook a dish for 1 hour, 25% of the alcohol will still remain in the cooking pan. If your cooking is done for 2 hours, 10% will remain. And in the same way, 2 hours and a half 5% will remain. And of course, 5%, even 5% is not acceptable in Islam. So you got to make an understanding that alcohol should never be used in cooking any food, no matter what. And of course, you got a lot of substitutes as we mentioned in the beginning. Muslim consumers should simply not cook with alcohol. That is the simplest answer to this very question. In addition, for example, for a lot of reasons, it's not advised for Muslims to bring alcohol into their homes for any purposes, and especially for cooking. When eating in restaurants, Muslim consumers should ask if the food contains alcohol, and if the answer to the question is yes, then avoid it by all means. The waiter may say yes, but it's burnt off or cooked off because they are not aware of the above studies. So even if they say that the alcohol used in this dish was burnt off or cooked off, don't take their words lightly. If a certain dish was cooked by using alcohol, then of course please try to avoid it at any cost. So brothers and sisters, thank you so much for your valuable time. Today we discussed very important topic, and of course the answer to the question as whether alcohol can be used for cooking purposes, our answer would be never use it. Rather, use the substitutes for alcohol for cooking any type of dish. So I hope that was useful to a lot of people around the world. Inshallah, we'll get back to you very soon with another episode from the Halal Times. So till then, Salaam Alaikum.